today we're looking at scatter plots. Okay, so a scatter plot is a graph that shows a relationship between two sets of points, or two sets of data. So a scatter plot is a graph that shows a relationship between two sets of data. So basically, you're comparing the x-axis to the y-axis, but you're actually giving them names in a scatter plot. We've been talking about x and y. Now we're going to say like ice cream sales to the temperature, something like that. We're going to compare two things. A correlation is the relationship between the two sets. When we're talking about the relationship, we call it the correlation. So how they correlate together, how they go together. And a lot of times, businesses use a trend line. It's a line that closely represents the trend of the data. So basically, you're going to draw a line that kind of represents what's happening with the data. Businesses use this all the time to figure out what's going to happen next. They could say, if the temperature is going to be 90 degrees, how much ice cream should we have on hand? They're going to come up with a line that's then going to be able to tell them how much they should order just based off the trends that's been happening. Sports do it all the time. Football analysts do it all the time to figure out the trend of a football player. Maybe when it's the fourth quarter and they're trying to make a touchdown, does that person perform? They're using a trend line to figure that out. So we're going to look at all of that today. All right. So first way to make a scatter plot. It's pretty basic. To make a scatter plot, you use the data as coordinate points. Whatever data they give you, you're using it as coordinate points. And then you assign each data set one of the axes. Doesn't matter which one you do, but you're going to want to assign them. This is taking it back to like 3rd and 4th grade graphing. Everybody with me so far? Questions? Okay, so looking at this next one, we're going to make a scatter plot of typing speed. So the amount of words you can type per minute. Everybody with me? So I've assigned words on the bottom, minutes on the Y. So all you do is you say, okay, 14 words in 5 minutes. So I go find 14, I find the 5, and I put a dot. That's all a scatter plot is. A scatter plot is a bunch of points. So you're going to continue. So then go to 10, go up to 3. Now, the nice thing about scatter plots is they're never truly exact, but they should all look pretty similar. If yours doesn't look similar to the people around you, you all probably need to reconsider how you've done it. Hopefully yours looks something like mine. Hopefully. Now, the nice thing about scatter plots is they're not going to be perfect because it's just a bunch of dots. But a scatter plot can tell us a lot. So just looking at the scatter plot, don't draw a line or anything, but looking at the scatter plot, what could you tell us about words in minutes, just based on what's happening with the dots? It's positive. Why do you say it's positive? Because the dots kind of seem to be going uphill, right? So how can we summarize that with words and minutes? What can we say to summarize it? Talk about that at your table right now. Come up with a summary of this scatter plot. Talk about it at your table. Every table needs a summary to look at. Team kind of already told us that this is positive because they're going in an uphill trend. So we call that a positive correlation. Everybody with me? This is a positive correlation. So a positive correlation is when the things are doing the same thing. So like here, as words go up, minutes go up. That both are going up. That's a positive correlation. When both sets of data are going up, we call that positive. It can also be positive if both things are going down. Like as the temperature goes down, ice cream sales go down. That's a positive correlation. They're both doing the same thing. Even though they're both going down, that's still positive. Does that make sense? Can someone come up with something else in the real world that's positive? Something else in the real world that's negative correlation. Negative correlation is if one thing goes up and the other thing goes down. So like Leah's, as temperature goes up, as temperature goes down, coat sales go up. Those are going opposite each other. Temperature is going down, coat sales are going up. Those are opposite. Just like you could say as temperature goes up, coat sales go down. They're going opposite each other. So right now at your table, come up with a negative correlation, things that go opposite each other. Relationship we talk about is what we call a no correlation. That means they're just randomly here. We say there's no relationship. This happens with things that don't affect each other. This is easier because these are easy to think of. Like we could say how tall a person is compared to their hair color. Those don't correlate. They in no way hinder one or the other. There's no relationship there. We can say, stop. We can say a student's grade compared to how tall they are. Doesn't relate to each other. You could say how hot it is compared to how much food you eat. Like that's not gonna. There's no correlation. So no correlation is two things that don't affect one another. Does everyone understand that? Okay, put the rulers down. They're driving me crazy. All right, flip to the back for me. So next. Okay, now we're going to look at if there is a correlation. So if you decide it has a positive correlation and has a negative correlation, we can then draw what we call a trend line. So if you do find that it has a correlation, you can draw yourself a trend line. This trend line is going to answer lots and lots of questions. This is what data analysts use all the time. They use trend lines all the time to predict the future. Weathermen use it all the time. So, things we need to know about a trend line. You want it as close to each data point as possible. You want to get that line including as many points as possible. You want about the same number of points on each side of it. So in other words, you want it to go basically through the middle of your data. It obviously can't touch every piece of data, but you want it to touch and be close to that. You want it to also goes directly through at least 2 points. You want it to hit at least 2 points. Is everybody with me? Now, the thing about trend lines is they're going to look different for everybody. Where T does not say no to that. Where T puts a trend line, it may be different where Dusty puts a trend line, maybe different where Carter, Michelle. We all can put different trend lines as long as it's going with the trend of the data. So obviously this is positive. Everybody with me? Mm-hmm. So your line, hence it's a line, which means you don't sit here and connect dots. That's not a trend line. A trend line is a straight line going in the direction of the data. Don't draw a trend line. So you want to get it as close to each point as possible, same number of points on each side, and you want it to go directly through at least 2 points if you can. Sometimes that's not possible. So you all are going to draw a trend line with me. This is the only time that our trend lines will be the same. I'm going to go through these 2 points. Okay? Now watch, and then you may do. So I'm going to go through these 2 points right here. And I'm going to make it, mine's not going to be perfect, but yours should be. I'm going to make it look something like that. I have 3 on top, 4 on the bottom, and I have this outlier, so I'm not really worried about it. But draw your trend line pretty close to mine. Now, this is the one, if it's not perfectly like mine, that's okay. But this is the one time our trend lines will be similar. two things is this data representing? What are we comparing here? What are we comparing? And what do the dots represent? The visitors to what? No. Visitors to what? The beach. Well, what are we comparing? So we're comparing the what? So as the temperature is going up, what are they claiming is happening to the visitors? They're going up. The higher the temperature is at the beach, the more visitors you're going to have, right? So if the temperature is 0, just like we're representing here, do you expect a lot of visitors at the beach if the temperature is 0? No. So that's why hopefully you've intersected somewhere pretty low on the y-axis. All right. So once you've drawn the trend line, you'll be able to write a linear equation going back to 9.1. Once you have the trend line, you're going to be able to write a linear equation. This is what's going to tell you so many things. This is what's important. All right. So to write a linear equation, you need at least 2 points. So I always pick the 2 points that actually went through on my trend line. So I'm going to pick 84. So when the temperature is 84, they think there's 225 visitors. And when the temperature is 86, they say there's 300 visitors. They have to fall on your trend line. You can't just pick any 2 random. They have to be 2 that fall on your trend line. Everybody with me? All right, so find the slope right now. Find the slope at your table. Find the slope. All you have to do is plug in a point. So you can plug in either this point or this point. It doesn't matter. I'm going to plug in the first point. So I'm going to plug in the second point. So x, y. So y is 300. X is 75 over 2. We've done this before. Times 86 plus b. This is, you have to have a y-intercept. You can't really read it on the graph, so you got to calculate it. Everybody with me? So this is 86 over 1. So I have 300 equals, I calculated this for you. I did 75 times 86, then divided by 2, got 3,225 plus b. That's just me multiplying it out for you, so you all don't have to do it. And then subtract 3,225, subtract 3,225, b equals negative 2,925, which makes sense, because if it's 0 degrees at the beach, they're going to be in the negative for visitors. They're not going to have any visitors. Now, it's a little unrealistic, but since it's a trend line, we're saying if it was trending, there would be negative guests at the beach, which makes sense if it's 0 degrees at the beach. That's what I'm saying. It's not realistic, but since it's mathematical, they're saying if it was 0 degrees, the beach can predict they're going to be in the negative, which makes sense. Is there such thing as negative 2,925 people? No, but mathematically and in our minds, it makes sense. So our trend line for the beach is y equals 75 over 2x plus negative 2,925. Tomorrow, we're going to look at, once you know this, how they use it to predict things, which is what we're really trying to get to. So you should be able to draw a trend line and then the equation for a trend line today. Everyone, none of it's really new besides drawing a trend line. This you all knew how to do from last chapter. Questions on how to do this?